everyone, it's Megan here from Meghan Makes Do, and today I want to show you how to pick up stitches along your work when you're knitting. So this is typically found in patterns like when you're picking up for neckline stitches or wanting to do like an edging along the kind of wonky side of your knitting. So it's a good thing to learn how to do. And it's actually pretty simple once you get the hang of it. So for today's tutorial, I'm just using a little swatch that I have of the double rice stitch. And I'm going to be using the same yarn that I used for my swatch, as well as the same size needles that I used for my swatch, which are a 5.5 millimeter. So in order to pick up stitches along any edge, you need to leave a kind of a long tail just for like when you weave in your ends at the end. And just be mindful of how you're wrapping the yarn around your needle. So I'm going to start by showing you how to pick up stitches along a nice clean edge, like the bound off edge here. So we're going to start by going into my first stitch here. So you're just going to stick your needle through, and then you want to wrap the yarn around just as you would for a regular yarn over. So yarn over. This first one can be a little bit tricky trying to pull it through. And then you're gonna pull it through like this and slide it onto your needle. So then we can go into our next stitch and the same thing, yarn over. Ooh, very tricky to get started, and pull through and slide that onto your needle, just like that. And you're just going to continue doing that same thing. So it's almost like you are picking up like you would with the crochet hook, which I know you can also use a small crochet hook to pick up stitches as well, if you find that that's easier. But it is possible to do with a needle. It just takes a little bit of practice pulling up those stitches. Just like that. So you'll continue to pull up stitches along your work until you get to the very edge here. So you can see that when you pull up those stitches, you will see this part, like the bind off stitches on the back side of your work. So just know that when you are picking up stitches, like say this was for your neckline, you'd want to make sure that the right side of your piece was facing you. So that this is on the inside of your work. So whatever the pattern instructs you to do, if it says to pick up stitches with the wrong side facing you, there's a reason for that, because you will see a little bit of a ridge here wherever you pick up stitches. Okay, so now I want to show you how to pick up stitches along an edge like this, where it's not so easy to see exactly how many you should be picking up. So it's the same process and same method as before, but typically when we're picking up stitches along the rows here and not just into a stitch, you want to pick up roughly, usually it's about 2 stitches for every 2 stitches for every 3 rows. Sorry about that. But again, it's not an exact science, and so it's going to take a little bit of practice knowing exactly how many to pick up along the row edge. So I inserted my needle, yarn over, and this can be a little bit trickier when we're going in the edge of a row, because there's a lot more chance you're going to pick up, some loops from this side of the row and not just your strand of yarn. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our second picked up stitch. And you can see I'm just kind of trying to find a little hole in the side here and picking up stitches evenly along the edge. Again, it's not a total exact science, so try to pick up about 2 stitches every 3 rows. So just continue picking up stitches evenly as you can across all the rows, and since the rows tend to be shorter than the stitches are wide, you'll need less stitches to pick up than you do, like say you're working into the top of the stitches, you know that you're going to pick up a stitch for every bind off stitch we see here. But for rows, since they're shorter, then the stitches are wide, we're probably only going to pick up maybe like 2 stitches per every 3 rows. And it may take a little bit of practice. You might have to do a row after you pick up and see, oh, if it's pulling, you need more stitches. If it's wavy, you need less stitches. So it's good to kind of practice and kind of get used to the picking up of stitches in knitting. And again, if you feel more comfortable or like you have more control using a crochet hook, that's fine. I tend to, when I get that loop through, that initial loop through, it's pretty tight on my needle, so always kind of pull up on it so that you can get more of a bigger loop onto your needle like this. And then once you've picked up all the way across, you can turn your work and you are ready to start your first row of the pattern. But it's a pretty good skill to know because it is called for in a lot of knitting patterns, especially when you're working garments. I know that in my Wesson vest pattern, which uses this yarn and this stitch, we will be picking up stitches along the neckline, and luckily that is all into the top bind off stitches, so it's a little bit easier than working along the edge of the rows. So now that I've got all the stitches picked up along the edge here, just like that, I can turn and I'll be ready to work my first row. And just remember that the wrong side of your work will have a little bit of a ridge after you pick up the stitches, so be mindful of that when you are picking up stitches in a pattern. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I hope that you will give picking up stitches a try.